This is the temperature, the boiling point diagram, equilibrium diagram that I was referring to. So if you're going to determine the relative volatility of the bottom's liquid, you will be needing the mole fraction of A, the lighter component in the bottom's liquid. You go up and you rest here. This will be the temperature that you will be using in section 2 of your handbook to determine the pure vapor pressure of your lightweight component, at the same time your heavy component in the bottom's liquid. Now, in determining the temperature that you will use for getting the pure vapor pressure of your distillate, you will be needing the mole fraction of the distillate. For example, it would be zero point 0.6. You go up until you reach the saturated vapor curve, and then you read here the temperature. This will be the temperature that you will be using in finding the pure vapor pressure of, again, the two components in your distillate. It's an alternative way of finding the alpha for both your distillate and your bottom's liquid. An alternative if the table giving the relationship between XY is not provided in the problem. So I'd like to quit sharing here and I go to our slide. Okay, so this is where we ended a while ago. Now, as I said a while ago, you need to find the location of the point where your feed line is going to intersect your equilibrium curve. In our first part discussion on distillation, that is referred to as the pinch point. The pinch point is the intersection of your feed line on the equilibrium curve. In this problem, our Q is 1 because our feed is saturated liquid with 40% pentane. So that's zero point 0.4 here. We draw a vertical line representing Q, which is equal to 1, and this is the pinch point. You're going to get the corresponding Y prime here and the corresponding X prime, which is equivalent to 0 0.4. Where your feed line intersects the equilibrium curve in determining the pinch point is the same point where your enriching section operating line will meet your feed line. It's because your enriching section operating line and your feed line is going to meet in this particular point we call the pinch point. So they are to meet there. So their intersection will also be that point. Now, determining the minimum reflux ratio is very easy. So once you have the X, Y, and the Y prime and the X prime, you'll be able to get the R minimum. So if I will continue, our R minimum over R minimum plus 1 will be dependent on this particular X prime and Y prime values. If I'm not mistaken, it's in here in the succeeding, or it's in part 1 of the slide. Let me share to you part 1 of distillation so you can recall the formula in determining the pinch point coordinates. It's in the latter part. You have the formula in determining the minimum reflux ratio rather using, that's your Finsky equation. This is the Finsky equation using this one. This is what I'm referring to. You get the minimum reflux ratio by getting the value or using the value of the distillate mole fraction of the lightweight component and the X prime and Y prime. So that's the very purpose why you need to get the XY and the X prime and the Y prime. Now, what if you cannot do this one and your Q is not, and your Q is not actually saturated is not for a saturated liquid? In this case, it's very easy because your Q is equal to 1. It's vertical because your feed is saturated liquid. What if it's a subcooled liquid or a mixture of liquid and vapor? How will you determine this pinch point? Okay. In my previous class in SEPA, they know it already. But for the newcomers here, I will also explain it. And please listen. You are to write down the equation representing your feed line. What's the equation of the feed line? I have presented it in slide number in the first part of distillation. You have an equation for the feed line, and you also have an equation for the enriching section operating line. You solve the two equations simultaneously. The corresponding value of x and y that you'll be able to solve, that would be the pinch point. That will be your alternative if you're not given a Q that is readily plotted here, which is a straight line. If the Q you need to determine first, then you have to rely on the intersection of the 2 points, of the two lines rather, the feed line and the intersection of the enriching section operating line. Now, I'd like to go back to the first slide again to show to you how these equations, or what are these equations I'm referring to. Um, this is the equation of your feed line. Okay, it has Q, which you need to plot in there. If it's not equal to 1, then you will have a problem, as I said, plotting the way we did in that particular problem. And if you're not supposed to plot because it's board exam, then there has to be a manner in which you can write the equation of the feed line without having to resort to graphical procedure. So this is your feed line equation. What about your enriching section operating line? Your enriching section operating line is this. Y is equal to R over R plus 1x plus XD over R plus 1. So with the R knowns and the XD known, your X and Y relationship can be represented by this particular line. So you do solve the two lines simultaneously. The XY value that you will be getting will be your pinch point, which you will be needing in the formula here for determining the R sub m. And actually, that's the same procedure that was illustrated in the problem. Okay, if you know already x prime and y prime, then R sub m can be solved. Okay, I'd like to go back to our slide 2. So that's the second part of the problem. I chose this one because it allows you to determine the R sub m and the n minimum. If you know that too, then using this graph, actually the handbook is also relying on this graph in determining the theoretical number of stages. So if you know this and you know this one is given in the problem, so you can solve for n. You can solve for n after you have already read out the values, or rather after you have read out the corresponding value that you will be able to project here on the horizontal axis, after you have this value and this value already. Okay, so in just one particular problem, the things that are very, very important in solving feed plate location, number of stages, and all those things you already know. This one will just follow if you already have the theoretical number of stages, because this is just but a ratio. Once you have the n, the sum of this will be the n, and everything will just be very easy. You can get already the number of stages for each section of your distilling column. And by the way, if I missed mentioning it, so this is the representation yn and xn. Your xn is said to be equilibrated to yn, the vapor leaving this particular tray n here, and your y1 equilibrated to x1, the liquid that is leaving the same tray 1 here. Okay, a simple illustration of the distilling column. Okay, now I need to go to the other things that are written here. If you have a class and you need to be excused by 4:20, you may go ahead. So for the special types of rectification, which are all found in Gian Couples, they cannot be solved using pure analytical procedure. They can be solved with the use of graphical technique. In the case of stripping column distillation, it's as if rather that your column is just having a stripping section. It doesn't have an enriching section. And the feed here is usually saturated liquid at its boiling point, and it's being introduced on top of the stripping column. So it doesn't have an enriching section. So it is now referred to as stripping column distillation. Overhead product V sub D is the vapor rising from the top plate, which goes to the condenser, and we expect that there's no reflux in this case. No reflux because we don't even have an enriching section. Your bottom's liquid is rich in, of course, in the non-volatile component. The column operates as a stripping tower with the vapor removing the more volatile component from the liquid as it flows down. The sections I'm referring to in here are, and figure is the one that you can find in your handbook. So just please check. Now, in the case of stripping column distillation, if viewed using the graphical technique of McCabe, you have a feed that is liquid, saturated liquid. So your Q line is vertical, resting right on X sub F. And your stripping section operating line, of course, would still start with the X sub W given by the problem most of the time, 100% of the time. And you will project the value of YD here on your vertical line, and that's your Q line. The Y sub D is the mole fraction of your lightweight component in the distillate. So from here on the vertical axis, you project it right here, and that's where your stripping section operating line will rest. It will be connected, this point will be connected to this, and the rest in determining the number of stages will be the same. It's the same manner as we determine the total number of stages. Now, if our feed is saturated liquid in this case, the L sub M, this one, the liquid that goes down the column from coming from stage M in your stripping distilling column will just be equal to F. Even if we don't have this said in here, assuming constant molal overflow, all the liquids that goes down are to be constant. It's because whatever comes in or whatever is the liquid phase that is being received by a stage, that's the same liquid phase that leaves the stage. That's constant molal overflow or molar overflow. If feed is below the boiling point, meaning it's subcooled liquid, the Q line to be used is Q greater than 1. And in that case, this vertical Q line will be somewhat slanted here towards the right whenever you have a subcooled liquid, because I have presented that already in the first part as to what would be the orientation, the different orientations of your feed line depending on the value of the Q and depending on its status, whether it's saturated liquid, saturated vapor, subcooled liquid, or a mixture. And in this case, if you have a subcooled liquid, your LM, the liquid that goes down or leaves tray M, a specific tray will label as M in your stripping column distillation, will be a product of the computed Q, which is greater than 1, and the value of the feed. So there will be a slight variation now in the amount of liquid that this particular part of your column, the stripping column, receives if your Q is greater than 1. Okay, so this is how you do it. Very easy. If it's enriching column distillation, the distillate here is more rich in the volatile component. Still, of course, the distillate is always rich in the more volatile component. And the feed enters the bottom of the tower as vapor. So the opposite of the first. So if the feed enters the top as liquid for stripping column distillation, this one, the feed enters the bottom of the tower as vapor. Bottom's product is comparable in terms of characteristic to the feed, but at times may be slightly leaner in the volatile component. This phrase could be interpreted that there are times wherein your feed will have lesser amount of the least volatile component on it compared to the vapor. If feed is saturated vapor, the V sub N is equal to F. And that's the V that is leaving tray N in your enriching column distillation. The enriching line and the Q line equation, when you have the scenario in which you have a complete column, having both sections, enriching section and stripping section, would still be the same. In the case of enriching section distillation, this will be the cutaway view for that. Okay, so the N plate is this one. And this is your N plus 1. Okay, Another special case of rectification is one in which we're using steam as the heating medium. An external heating fluid is injected directly into your column. So the reboiler then will not be needed because the purpose of the reboiler is to partially provide the vapor that goes up against the liquid that goes down. So if there's a steam already injected directly to the column, then your reboiler is not needed anymore because the purpose of the steam in the first place is to partially vaporize the liquid at the bottom of the column. So that being said in here on the first bullet, the steam is injected, a small bubbles into the liquid in the tower bottom. Now, when we determine the number of stages here, this may require an extra fraction of stage since the step starts below the y equal to x line. In all the graphical techniques using McCabe-Thiele method, the x sub w always rests right on the 45-degree line. In this case here, it will not rest on the 45-degree line, but rather it will rest right on the x-axis. So it will require an extra fraction of stage. Now this one is advantageous over the others which needs the auxiliary reboiler equipment because it is having the heater already incorporated in the design of the column itself. So there's no auxiliary equipment outside of the distilling column. And by the way, having said that, the illustration here I have shown, this is just for simplifying the procedure, that the condenser actually most of the time is represented outside of your column. In the same thing that your reboiler is written outside to emphasize that the two are not actually really part of the column itself. We only have the stages in the column, but the total condenser and the reboiler are all, shall we say, auxiliary equipment for your column. So it was just placed in there because in the industry also, there are columns in which the topmost part is already condenser, where the living vapor from the topmost plate is directly condensed or turned into liquid. Okay, so that's for the steam direct steam injection. Now, this is what it meant wherein it will require an extra fraction of the stage. So your bottom's liquid is not right on the 45-degree line, but rather right on the x-axis. So if you do the stepping off, for example, like this, you don't step off right here, but rather you stop off here. So in terms, this is the extra fraction that is being referred to in here. So enriching section operating line is the same as in direct steam. I mentioned already the same thing with the Q line. The way you plot the Q line is the same with the standard rectification process. Okay, this is for your column which has steam directly injected at the bottom of the column. So there's no reboiler anymore to partially vaporize the liquid at the bottom of the column. Okay, we also have this one, but this is not being covered anymore in the course because of the complexity of the operation in itself. But this is the real thing that happens in the industry, especially when we have a fractionating column in the refining process for crude oil. There are side streams, not only one side stream, but several side streams wherein products are being withdrawn, depending on the particular quality of product or on the type of product that it will need to extract from the column or take from the column. So arises when intermediate product or side streams are to be removed from sections of the tower between the distillate and the bottoms. The side stream may be either liquid or vapor, which can be removed either above the feed entrance or below, depending on the composition desired. And I think this was presented also in the videos that I have shown in the first part, especially in the process of refining. Now, this is just a simple illustration of a column that has a side stream O. So when you do your overall material balance, if this is the case, your F now will be equated to the sum of these three, the D, the O, and the W. Okay, so this is now your overall material balance. And if you're going to write down the general equation of the operating line for such a column, that would be this line. It's dependent on the amounts of the distillate and the side stream correspondingly to the mole fractions and this particular LS. So that LS is this particular liquid leaving a particular stage S here in your upper part of the column. As I have mentioned, it's already complex, and as such, we only tackle problems which have a single feed and two product streams, the distillate and the bottoms liquid. Okay. Now, if that particular scenario, this one, is drawn using a McCabe-Thiele diagram, you will have now 3 operating lines plus the feed line. This is the operating line for the side stream. The operating line for this particular side stream is this one. So it has labeled S plus 1. So it's now considering the side stream. Okay. Now, what about the partial condenser? What about this partial condenser? So this is, if it's a partial condenser, the first step here that you do when you write or when you use the graphical approach will be the condenser stage. And actually, it's the usual case. So what is this partial condenser? It's used in cases where the overhead distillate product is removed as vapor instead of liquid. So we remove the final product in the form of vapor. This is used when low boiling point of distillate makes its complete condensation difficult. So meaning if the volatility of the component present in the distillate is so small that having it condensed after vaporization is difficult. So rather than needing another stage or another processing for that particular vapor, then it's being withdrawn as a vapor. In that case, you only have a partial condenser. Why it's a partial condenser? Because liquid condensate is returned into the column as reflux, while the rest that cannot be condensed because of its very low volatility or boiling point is removed as vapor. But still you are condensing. Take note, you are condensing part of the vapor, leaving the top plate for the purpose of reflux. You really need to provide reflux liquid that goes down to your column. When time of contact between the vapor and the liquid is sufficient, the partial condenser is considered another theoretical stage. And in that case, if it's another theoretical stage class, as mentioned here, you're not only going to subtract 1 in your total number of stages represented in the graphical technique, but rather you will subtract 2. So take note, you subtract 2 if the problem says that your condenser is partial condenser. Most of the time, class, it's not partial condenser, it's total condenser. So you only need to subtract 1 from the total number of N that you have determined using the graphical approach. So the total condenser is the most frequently used setup. It condenses all the vapor from the column and supplies both the reflux and the liquid product, which is the distillate. The concentrations of the vapor from the top plate, the reflux, and the product in this case are all equal because everything, all the vapor leaving the top plate is condensed into liquid. Now, as for tray efficiencies, this is also relying on graphical approach if we are to determine this one. If time of contact and degree of mixing in a tray or stage is insufficient, and this is always like all of the time, because there's no such thing as a stage or tray that is working on 100% efficiently, the streams, liquid and vapor leaving the stage will not be equilibrated, resulting to a tray or stage that is efficiency, whose efficiency is less than 100%. And in most cases, guys, class, it's really less than 100%. There's no equipment virtually man-made that is working 100% efficiently. Now, if stage efficiency is less than 100%, the number of actual stages to be used to acquire desired separation will be a lot more than the theoretical number of stages determined, either graphically or analytically. It's because of this efficiency. Now, When we speak of the overall tray efficiency, it simply uses two values. The number of ideal trays, and this is your theoretical number of trays, and the actual that is being used. So it's just like that. So overall tray or plate efficiency represented as E sub O. And this concerns the entire column. It's the least fundamental, meaning it's the least accurate of the three. I will discuss that too later. And this is defined as the ratio of the number of theoretical or ideal stages to the number of actual trays. The Morphy efficiency is the oftentimes used manner of expressing the efficiency of a stage or tray. In here, you need to know the average actual concentration of mixed vapor leaving tray N. This is tray N. Its average, meaning if you're going to account for all the concentration of the vapors leaving that particular tray N. The Y sub N plus 1 is that of the still average actual concentration of mixed vapor entering because it's N plus 1. And Yn asterisk is the concentration of the vapor in equilibrium with the liquid leaving the tray to the downcomer. Concentration of the vapor in equilibrium with the liquid leaving the tray to the downcomer. That's your Y sub N asterisk. So that's your Morphy tray efficiency. We even have the point or local tray efficiency if Morphy is more accurate than the tray efficiency, which is the least fundamental of the three. This one, the point or local tray efficiency or the Morphy point efficiency is even more accurate than the Morphy tray efficiency. So in here, we're not taking the average of the concentrations of the vapors leaving a tray or the vapor entering a tray, but rather we get the concentration of a vapor leaving a specific point. So now you're very specific now, a specific point on tray N. So I will be needing only 10 minutes more. Okay, now your Y sub N prime is the one leaving the point on tray N. The Y prime sub N plus 1 is the vapor entering the point N on tray N, entering the point on tray N. So this is referring to the same point in here, the point in here on tray N. So this one is leaving, this one is entering, point on tray N. This one is leaving, point on tray N. The Y sub N asterisk is the concentration of the vapor in equilibrium with the liquid living at that same point. So it's all about the point, not just the tray, but rather the point in a specific tray. So that is why it's called point efficiency or local tray efficiency. Now, how we relate this in terms of how we represent it in terms of an actual illustration. If these are vapors leaving your tray, so your Morphy tray efficiency takes the average of these vapor concentrations. This was also taking the average of the vapor concentrations entering a tray. Whereas if it's a specific point on the tray, so this is like, if this is the point, so your Y sub N prime will be the vapor leaving this point on tray N. The X sub N prime is the concentration of the vapor entering this particular point on tray N. So it's now specific on a particular point on tray N. Now, in terms of the things that you need to know about tray efficiencies, so your Y sub N prime cannot be greater than Y sub N asterisk. As such, local efficiencies cannot be even 100%. Okay, so since even if local efficiencies are more accurate than Morphy efficiencies, this value of Y sub N prime can never be greater than Y sub N asterisk. On small diameter towers, the vapor flow sufficiently agitates the liquid so that it is uniform on the tray, which makes the concentration of the liquid leaving the tray the same as that on the tray, making the point efficiency equal the Morphy efficiency. So these two can only be equal, the point efficiency and the Morphy efficiency, if your tower is a small diameter tower. But if it's a large diameter tower, never can these two be equal. In large towers, of course, we expect that our Morphy efficiency will be greater than your Morphy point efficiency, because your Morphy point efficiency is more accurate than the Morphy efficiency. So we expect that the value we're getting for Morphy efficiency will be bigger because it's not as accurate as the Morphy point efficiency. As to the relationship of the least fundamental of the efficiencies, and that's the tray efficiency, to Morphy efficiency, which is the one commonly used, this is the equation that we can use. The L over V is still the slope of the operating line, and M is the slope of the equilibrium line. Now, for our distilling column, and I will end here, the rest of what is written here, I'd like you to read, and upon reading it, you also use it in the sample problems that I have indicated for you to read at the last parts of the slide. Now, we're also using in distilling column packing materials. We can also use trays which has perforations. We can also use trays which are having bubble cups, just like in gas absorption. So that's the similarity between distillation and gas absorption. So if our column is a packed columns, then the concept of the HETP would also be used here in determining how high will be our distilling column. So the height of a packed column necessary to give a separation equivalent to one plate or tray or stage is HETP. And it's also used in here. If you're going to multiply it to the theoretical number of stages that's determined, then you can theoretically also, as in theoretically, determine how high your column would be. So you need the HETP for that. And here's the formula for the HETP. The hog, or the height of your column, or the height of the packing material when we use the overall gas phase coefficient, or that's the hog, will be multiplied to the ln of m over lv. Same thing with this here to get the HETP, which you need to multiply to the n to get the height of the column. Or just like in gas absorption, you can have the formula hog-nag. In distillation class, we don't use the Hall null as much as possible because we are governed here, more likely governed here by the gas flows, because our liquid now is being turned into vapor. Okay, so in terms of finding the height of the column, that would be using the Hog nag. Now, HETP is most of the time being used because the problem in itself gives us shall I say, an easier way of finding the efficiency of our column. And the easy way of finding the efficiency of the column is the overall tray efficiency, or simply the tray efficiency. We can determine the tray spacing based on what is stipulated in the problem. Like if your diameter is like this, then what would be the tray spacing? So this would be the tray spacing. If your diameter is 1 meter, the tray spacing would be 0.6. If your diameter is greater than 4 meters, this would be your spacing. So knowing the T based on the diameter of the column, which should be given, together with the tray efficiency, you can find the HETP. And then you just need to multiply it with the N to get the height of your distilling column. Okay, now these are formulas that you can look up in John Kuplis. It's stated here, John Kuplis, in terms of the different formulas for the HETP or the Hognog. You have these equations here. So please check on it because it's also applicable on gas absorption. Okay. McCabe-Thiele diagram, which uses the Morphy tray efficiency in determining the actual number of stages, does it like this. You have to draw a new curve which uses the ratio of AB to AC, and with the new curve, but this is class very, like, shall I say, Not very, but it's 100% graphical because you are to draw the new curve here for you to be able to plot the actual number of stages. But nonetheless, this is how it's done using McCabe-Thiele graphical approach. I won't discuss it anymore. You can read on that because in terms of its coming out of the board exam is zero probability because you need to draw this one really. But before, when it's pre-COVID, I still discuss this because we have a lot of time to do that. But now we don't have the luxury of time for it. So just read on what you have there in your Janko, please, and how this particular curve is, shall I say, drawn from the value of the more free efficiency. Okay. And you have these balances, the energy balance equations that would lead you to determine the condenser duty and the reboiler duty. So the last part here is about the condenser duty and the reboiler duty for your distilling column. I think the name itself implies the reboiler duty, the amount of heat that should be supplied to your reboiler, the condenser duty, the amount of heat that your condenser should be able to absorb. For that matter, the cooling water that is being supplied by your condenser. That way, it's able to convert the vapor to liquid. So that is why condenser duty. In our language, anong trabaho sang condenser? Same thing with reboiler duty. How much energy will your reboiler supply to your liquid to be partially vaporized. So this is the equation already. Okay. As for heating requirements, I'm just writing it here, but this one is found in your handbook. The same exact equation. I was not just able to write the equation here. This is for the steam requirement in the reboiler. And this one is the mass flow rate of the cooling water in your condenser. Because we need cooling water in the condenser, you have this formula. I think everything there is specified or defined as to what is written in the formula. And this one is the steam in the reboiler, as I have mentioned. You need to study the problems in McCabe on